All right, we are here with another Be the Exception podcast. We're here with Cooper Sellers. Cooper, thanks for coming on.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure,
First time, only took months and months. I feel,
you are just talking. Yeah. I know. We had a lot of guests on over the last couple months, but then we were trying to figure out how to set up in here too. So, appreciate you coming on.
Yeah.
Appreciate you doing everything for us. So,
of course, man. I figured you should have like a signature. I guess every podcast has like, a drink or cigars or something.
Cigars would be nice.
You need to do that, man.
Can we smoke them in here?
I mean, yeah, we can get
You don't care?
a little ventilation. Okay. We can set something up, man.
Yeah.
But, we got the coffee. But maybe a cigar,
I'll be down if we can get a ventilation system in here for sure.
I think that could be your signature thing.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I like it.
Get your own label.
Yeah.
Blacklisted
cigars.
Yeah.
So we start growing tobacco out back.
Right. I think that's legal, right?
It's got to be, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we can just clear a little patch in that forest back there, start growing some tobacco.
Nobody would know.
Nobody will know.
Yeah.
That's sweet. Tell us a little bit about yourself. I think we're gonna get into some of your training history, how you started TTB, like all that stuff. But yeah, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, obviously.
Yeah. Cooper Sellers.
Yep.
So I guess originally from Alabama.
Yep.
Lived there. Dad got a job at the college in Milledgeville, so moved to Georgia when I was, I think, 11 years old.
Oh, wow.
And so he was a basketball coach. Grew up with family full of teachers, educators. Grew up playing sports, all the sports, baseball, basketball came a little bit later, but loved it all. Loved athletics, loved sports, and then having a dad as a coach, you're constantly around the sport.
Yeah.
So I would just, I'd go to the gym with him, basketball gym, and just mess around for hours and hours.
Yeah.
And family moved to Georgia, and then he worked at the college and went to high school, went to college there, and played basketball for him.
That's sweet.
Yeah. So
what was that like?
It was wild, man.
Yeah.
It was wild. I mean, the dad never, I think it was my coach growing up. He had his own team, right?
Yeah,
so
right.
he was a very passionate coach. And so was at most of my games, but never coached me until, I was in college.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things of, I wasn't getting recruited by, high level Division I or Division II. There was a couple schools thought about doing the junior college route. Maybe I could have gone to a Division II or even maybe a higher Division I after a couple good years in junior college. But decided to stay home, and again, being around the program, you know all the guys, you kind of fall in love with those guys, and you're just around the community, the team, and I was like, you know what, I want to be here. I want to be here.
Yeah.
Yes,
when you were growing up, like, did he, when like on the rides home, was he like, hey, you got to do this better, like kind of coaching you up, or was it just like he was just there to support?
I honestly don't remember.
Oh, okay.
I don't remember that part. There's a lot of things I remember as a kid, but I'm like, I don't remember those. And I think about it as a dad now,
right?
Driving home and the conversation, it's, you got to be careful, right? With
right.
kids, and there's a lot of psychology with anything as a coach and in sports and athletics. And now that I'm a dad and I've got two kids, they're getting older, so there's more opportunity, there's more things for them to do, whether it's travel ball and stuff. So it's just being able to get down to their level where you want to be, you want them to learn the life lessons, through sport.
Right.
And how do you have that conversation with a kid, because, we've all been there, right? You've seen the kids that were great, athletes at 10, 11, 12 years old, but they get burned out, whether that's the dad or a coach. And so I think there's just there's a line that you have to walk, and you have to be careful with that. But yeah, so again, I don't remember those conversations, my dad had, but I had a good experience. Definitely, a lot of lessons learned as being a coach's son, going through college. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, he must have done a good job because he wanted to play college ball and for him too. So it's interesting to like. It seems like you might have probably walked that line pretty well. Then I would imagine. Or,
Yeah, I think so. There was not a lot of, I was the one I think that would want to go out and practice. You know, I mean, it was make believe games.
Yeah.
Like we talked about. We love the NBA, right? So I love the NBA, and 10 years old, I'm Michael Jordan. That was my guy, right?
Right.
So, but just going through simulations like your MJ, 3, 2, 1, so I could be out there for hours, for hours. So I didn't really need the motivation, to push me.
Yeah.
I was out there, So I loved being outside. I loved sports, and then just gravitated more toward basketball.
Okay.
As I got older.
Yeah. So like, did you feel like he treated you differently when you were on the team than other kids?
If anything, it was harder.
Yeah.
It was harder.
Yeah.
And if anybody kind of knows my dad, like I said, I opened up with, he's very passionate, and he was the yeller. He was the screamer.
Okay.
He was the one pacing up and down the
sidelines,
ripping the jacket off, throwing the water bottles. So again, if anything, it was harder.
Okay.
But that actually put more good pressure on me, because I knew that I had to step up.
Yeah.
And I didn't want anybody to think that I was getting preferential treatment because my dad was a coach.
Gotcha.
And so that just pushed me even harder in preseason.
Okay.
Because when your teammates look at you and they go, God, he's busting his butt.
Yeah.
In preseason, he's the first one. I had to be the first, top 3 or whatever.
Right.
The hardest working guy on there.
Yeah.
And then it was, all right, so I've got their trust, right? So from the teammates. Now I've got to show almost, like the fans that come, that I've got to show them that I deserve to be out here on the floor. So I would just go before, we'd have this kind of preseason game, in front of the fans. And that was my time to really show them I belong on the floor. I belong, wherever he puts me in the lineup. I may not play, but at least they saw me and go, all right, he's good enough to be out here. He deserves some playing time. So that every year was just, it was a test. It was a test to show my teammates. Everybody was new the next year, right? Or most people, right? So you get new teammates, maybe a new coach. So it was a good, healthy source of motivation that I needed, going into the next year.
Okay. Yeah. Got it. So that it was more of a motivation factor for you then.
For sure.
Yeah. That's interesting. That's such a crazy dynamic to have father-son kind of coach relationship. So it's cool that it seemed to instill like some good life lessons in you though, like stepping up to the plate and like, almost being over prepared for people.
Right. And the other thing is, and I've talked about this, it's also another dynamic of the locker room, right?
Okay.
So you're in the locker room, there's no coaches, and let's say 99% of the time, you're going to have teammates or you've had an issue with your coach, right? And so a lot of people, you're talking about it. You got 15 guys in the locker room, why did coach do this? Why did coach do that? You know? So as a player, it's like, all right, I need to keep my mouth shut. Do I need to, because you want to defend you got to separate the two. It's like defending your dad, so it like eats you inside, and you're going, I'm talking about my dad like this.
Right.
At the same time, I agree. So it's like, I can't believe he did that. That a-hole, it's like, so that I think that was probably the most difficult part of the whole situation.
Okay,
is managing
like what hat do I
room.
wear? Yeah.
So
that's super. So
because if you come up and say, what are you talking about? He didn't do this wrong. The big part of you in your mind, you're thinking that.
Right.
You can't say that. Then you lose the
teammates' trust.
The trust. And it's like, well, we can't say anything around Cooper.
Right.
Right. Or, you want to vibe, right? That's being a teammate.
Right.
And so as you get older, in my junior and senior year, there's a little bit more of a voice, right? And so, but those first 2 or 3 years, I redshirted my first year.
Okay.
So those first couple of years, you're just you just want to be accepted.
Yeah.
And you don't want to say anything until you build that trust and that leadership and as a, upperclassman, if you will, right? That you have a little bit more of a voice at that point.
Okay. Yeah. So what kind of lesson did you learn from that then?
I think just being able to gel with the team, right?
Yeah.
So in business, whether you're working with, you have a partner or, coaches, trainers, of just understanding people and understanding how people tick.
Yeah.
When to pull back, when to push forward. So I think that was one of the biggest lessons, and that's why team sports is great. It's just you can be the best one on the team, but you'll learn pretty quickly you're going to face somebody better.
Yeah.
And so just being able to adjust and modify your role within the team because it changes, right? It changes. So whether that's someone that's coming from lead by example, and that was kind of that. I was that guy, lead by example. Wasn't a big vocal leader again until it was junior senior year. But it's understanding when to be vocal, when to be quiet and show, and just managing personalities, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're equal on a team, but as a point guard, and that's what I was 1-2. It's being able to. Well, I know my center. This guy, he doesn't take criticism that well. I can't yell at him, but this guy can. And so I had a couple guys, off the top of my head, I could go in, right? I know he was going to be motivated. This other guy, if I say something, he's going to be gone for the rest of the game.
Okay. Yeah.
So early on, I mean, it's just managing those personalities and how to talk to them.
Do you think that was kind of like influential in like you becoming a business owner and like, honestly, like you have a background of personal training, right? And so like that is a very sales and people oriented job. Like, do you think that was kind of like the catalyst and like a huge like ability for you to get into this profession? Or?
Oh, for sure. For sure. Like I said, you're managing 15 guys, right?
Yeah.
And I think there is something, I mean, the quarterback on the football team, calling the shots. It's the point guard. They're the leader. They're the generally of the team. And then managing coaches. The hierarchy there, and because you get different feedback from your coaches, and that's the other thing is being able to accept criticism and being coachable, right?
Yeah.
So you learn that. And, it takes time, right? It takes a lot of work to be able to absorb that information and take it. I think that's true for everybody, right? Some people take it better than others. But, number one, just being coachable, taking criticism, and being able to knowing how to talk to certain people.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Knowing where their buttons are.
Yeah. Is there anyone that's like any kind of personality types that's like more challenging for you to talk to than others, or? Well, that might be a pretty deep question.
Yeah, that's pretty deep. I think bigger personalities, are harder to talk to.
Okay.
I think that's taken more time to develop.
Okay.
Right, and understanding that you can't come at somebody with more fire. Right. You've got to be kind of more the silent one in that conversation.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
I've learned that over time.
Yeah. Were you just like back in the day? Were you like trying to meet fire with fire?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I'm right. You're wrong. It's I mean that didn't happen a lot, but the heart rate's going, the blood pressure's rising, and so it takes it takes time to develop that skill.
Yeah.
Of whatever that is.
Yeah.
Deep breaths and walking out of the room, and then it's like, well, I can't walk out of the room. I got to stay here and develop those skills.
Yeah.
And these are actually skills I'm talking to my son about right now.
Really?
Early on, it's like step away from a situation that's tough right now. Just get your emotions right, but we can't flee all the time.
Right.
So now he's 10 years old. Now it's about what do we do in that situation? You've been fleeing, right, and that's good. But now we can't flee all the time.
Yeah.
Now you got to stay there and figure it out.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So it just brings back these things, right? And you're teaching as a dad, you're teaching these things as to your kid,
right?
And it's something that I work on every day. You're constantly learning, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's very cool. Yeah. So I guess kind of getting back onto your story here, like you got done playing basketball. What was next?
So finish basketball. So I went to college, and I was, again, my family were educators, teachers. Dad was a coach. And so I said, you know what, let's try education. So I majored in education. I went through, I think, a year and a half, maybe 2 years of education. Wow. And, it wasn't firing me up. I was like, I don't know if I want to fall in the footsteps of, being a coach. And so throughout high school, college, I loved the training, the physical training of a sport.
Okay.
And I found that as I got older, even in college, I grew to love the training more than I did the sport. Mm. So it was, conditioning, strength, and I started getting into bodybuilding. I was reading the Muscle and Fitness, and, from there, I was like, I don't want to be in education. I don't want to be an educator for the rest of my life.
Okay.
I really loved working with athletes, and then I got into physical therapy. I said, I want to go to, physical therapy school. And so I changed majors to exercise science.
Okay.
And so 2 years of that, and went through all the prereqs of going to PT school.
Okay.
And there's my first internship was at a hospital.
Okay.
For I think 6 months. Absolutely hated it.
Oh, really?
So, you're doing everything. At that point, you're going up to, top floor, working with, 98-year-old ladies that are just trying to move their fingers.
And you're like, I've been an athlete my entire life.
Yeah, and so, and I want to be up and moving and working with people.
Yeah.
And, yes, it takes a special person to be able to do that. And I found that, and I was doing all the work with someone as the aide, and I would see the PT just doing all the paperwork, and this was early 2000s. So, we're not in electronic records. And
right.
So everything was by hand. And, I don't want to do that. I don't like writing.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So, but then worked in a sports rehab clinic for about a year, and loved that. I love that. So I'm working with athletes every day. And, it ranged, right? So you're working with kids, 10, 11, 12 years old, rehabbing, baseball, shoulder, elbow. And then, you had your older guys that are working, want to get back on the tennis court or whatever it is.
Okay.
So I enjoyed that a lot better. But still, I just kept looking like I'm doing all the work as the aide. The physical therapist is doing a lot of paperwork, and I do not want to do that. I do not want to do that. So, during that time, I was working, and part of our program and study in college and a senior that you had to train the faculty and staff.
Okay.
And so
that was part of the program
as a senior in school.
Oh,
so we started, those that wanted to go into personal training or some type of
physical therapy, something.
Physical therapy. So I learned, I was like, I like training somebody.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be, recovering from an injury. I really like the one-on-one, and I was all about results. I was, results driven. I'm like, man, if I could take someone overweight and in a week, 2 weeks, whatever
the case may,
I can see 5 pounds. That I got so excited.
Yeah.
So for myself, but see the excitement from somebody that you're changing their life.
Yeah.
And so I think early on, my thing was I loved working with the obese.
Okay.
And because it's like, man, when they're doing things that they had never done before, and it's been half their life, and they're able to do whatever, like get up, down off the ground, and get back up with relatively, with ease. I would get really excited about that.
Okay.
But then it's like, all right, you got an athlete, and you start working with them, and so that was a lot of fun. But so. Graduated again, worked in the sports rehab clinic, and I was like, I just want to find a job training.
Okay.
I know it wasn't going to be, down south, so let me move to Atlanta. I'll figure it out. So had a couple interviews, and went to the Gold's Gym in Roswell.
Yeah.
Got a job there, personal training, and
Yeah. That's quite a journey. It's awesome that you guys actually had to train people in school, because I have an exercise science degree as well, and we didn't do any of that. It was basically people were going to get exercise science degrees to go on to follow on schools. They were
right.
There was no actual application of exercise.
Right.
It was all science based, if that makes sense.
And I love that. And kind of backing up a little bit. So I was able to help out with some of the strength and conditioning programs with even the basketball program.
Oh,
kind of my
okay,
senior year.
yeah.
And that's another thing I fell in love with was the programming aspect of it.
Okay.
Designing programs. And that was another part of our syllabus was actually writing programs. And we had to present that to our professor of how we're going to take this faculty and staff with these requirements. This lady wants to lose 20 pounds based on what their goals are.
So you guys like went through a whole actual like legitimate like consultation, writing their program for them, or testing, writing their program, and like application of that program. Huh?
Yeah,
that's awesome
for sure. And so I just at that point I fell in love.
Yeah,
I fell in love with it.
Yeah. And so you knew you weren't gonna train down south. So how'd you settle on Atlanta being the spot?
I just biggest market, right?
Okay.
And
so you already had kind of like a business sense to it.
Yeah, I mean, I knew I wasn't going to go to New York, California.
Yeah.
Although I remember at times I put in an application. I remember this for the Indiana Pacers strength and conditioning.
Did you really?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I was like, I don't know. Let me just put it out there.
Yeah.
And it might have been that I wasn't qualified. I don't think at that time I had my CSCS, which is strength and conditioning specialist, which you had to have, to be a strength and conditioning.
Right.
So I think I got that maybe a couple of years later. But if I could start within a program, an NBA team,
that'd be wild.
And then move up.
Right.
I was like, that would be a lot of fun.
Right.
But I want to say it was the Indiana Pacers. But
okay.
So I put a couple, applications out, resumes, and went on a few interviews, and then again just decided on Gold's Gym.
Okay.
Yeah, Roswell looked like a nice area. So
was it the area that sold you, or what sold you?
It was a job.
Oh,
it was a job.
Okay.
I just wanted a job.
So they were like, that was like one of the first ones you got offered, basically, or
yeah, I think I went on three different places.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember the first one was Formwell Training. They're still around, I believe.
Oh wow. Okay.
And there was like two more.
Yeah.
But Gold's, yeah. Gold's, and I was like, offer me, and I was like, let's do it.
That's sweet.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
And I just like you go in, I just like the vibe. Right.
Okay.
But again, I didn't care. I just wanted a job.
Yeah.
I figured it out at that point.
Right. So what time? This was mid 2000s.
So this was so I moved to Atlanta in December 2006.
Okay.
And that was my first month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And so just being in the Roswell area now, like I've kind of this Gold's Gym is like, I feel like it's a little bit famous. It's no longer around, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
But it seems like it had this huge kind of like trainer base that went out and started their own things essentially from there. But I mean, you were telling me one time like you trained a bunch of famous people out of this Gold's Gym. Is that correct? Or?
Yeah, a few people. But I remember, I mean, there were several celebrities and bodybuilders that would come in.
Okay.
And so I had a few. There was Jerome Bettis would come in. Oh yeah, so I trained his wife.
Really?
For some time.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember. There was a few more.
Yeah.
But you had musicians, you had athletes.
That's nuts.
But a lot of bodybuilders. Famous bodybuilders too.
Ronnie Coleman ever come in?
Who's the other guy?
That was with
I don't know. It was a taller guy. If you said
he was like a rival
Coleman.
of Ronnie's. Or?
Yeah. But there was 2 or 3 that would come in there.
Were there really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, Dr. Jim, the chiropractor,
Yep.
if you know, he used to work on several of those guys.
Really?
A lot of former wrestlers, too.
WWE.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
So you had this, like, hodgepodge.
It was just such a, it's just like Roswell, Georgia was like this hot spot for almost all these like famous people that trained out of this one Gold's Gym.
Yeah, and actually right beside us was an athletic, it was mostly NFL sports performance place.
Okay.
So you had a lot of those guys. I remember Jamal Lewis. There was a lot of guys that would train. You had 15, 20 guys.
Sports-specific stuff there.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was called XPE or something like that.
That was the name of the place?
It was next door, right beside Goals.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And then they would just come over and hit
their
whatever
cardio,
they needed for
whatever,
workout.
Whatever. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. That's just crazy. Like they would all just kind of flock to Roswell, Georgia.
I know, and I think at the time, I mean,
because Roswell wasn't very big then, right?
No, I mean there was, but other than Gold's Gym, I don't remember any other main. Obviously, the name,
right?
You had the name.
Mid 2000s, like
that
Gold's
was big,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So not only did you have the name of Gold's, but I think LA Fitness might have been around, but it's like, all right, we're going else, so it was a lot more meat heavy,
right.
early on.
Yeah.
But it was great, man.
Yeah.
It was a great experience that I had during that time.
Because it seemed like it was much more like, it seemed like everybody bonded very well there. All the trainers bonded very well.
Yeah, we had a great team. I think at the time when I went, there might have been maybe 4 or 5 full-time trainers, all successful.
Yeah.
I mean, at one point, I think it was like I had 50 clients. I mean,
Yeah.
but you're working at 5 a.m.
Till like 7.
Till 8.
Yeah. Right.
You've got a little break during the day.
Yeah.
But that was most of our trainers. We had a successful PT department, and we were confident in our abilities, and I learned a lot. I came in at 23 years old, and there's a couple guys that had been there for 5-6 years.
Yeah.
So being able to kind of piggyback off of some of their stuff,
right,
and learn the business side of it.
Okay.
I knew how to train.
Yeah.
I love training,
right?
But understanding the business side of things was, paramount for me. I think, just as I continued my PT career.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. So, so that Gold's Gym closed down, right? Was the kind of the catalyst for everybody like starting their own thing?
Yeah, there were some changes in ownership and management.
Okay.
My ultimate goal, I remember my senior year in college when I was working at the PT clinic, I said my goal was I wanted to own, at the time I was thinking I was going to PT school.
Okay.
And I'm like, I want to own. I loved where I worked. I was really good friends with the owners there. I'm like, this is sweet. You know, I'm like, I want to own my own clinic.
Okay.
And so that was always in the back of my head.
Okay.
And so I got into training and personal training at Gold's. With new management, new ownership, I was like, it's come to a point where, again, I'm working 12, 14-hour days, 5 days a week, and Saturdays. I got 1 day off. I've always wanted to own my own place.
Yeah.
I just need an opportunity. And so I left. This was, I think, like May or June of 2009.
Okay.
And so opened up my own spot. I think it was like a little S corp. Went to the bank and said, "Let's open up an account." With the name Cooper Sellers Fitness. So it was that. I was like, I'm not whatever it is at the time. I just knew that it was time for me to branch out and kind of go on my own.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so yeah.
Yeah. What was that a scary endeavor that you took? Did you have some client?
Yeah,
I knew like, hey, some of these people
I had some people that I knew that would come over and train with me. And this is, 2009, still personal training. And then at that time, it was kind of, I don't say it was a new model, but we started doing a lot of buddy sessions. I was training. I was like, I got 12 hours in a day.
Yeah.
And so I would group a lot of people up.
Okay.
They started cutting our pay at Gold's Gym. I was like, well,
to do that, they started cutting.
Well, just before that, I'm like, well, how am I gonna, continue to bring home what I'm doing?
Yeah.
And it's like I've got to. That's my only solution.
Okay.
I've got to start buddying up.
Yeah.
People.
Okay.
Right. And we've only got 4 or 5 trainers, and it's like, all right, So I started getting into more buddy sessions, semi-private, and even boot camp style.
Okay.
So would do classes on Saturdays for 12, 15 people, along with my personal training clients, and I would start doing that because that's 2006, 7, 8, 9. Boot camps were the thing, right?
Thing.
That was in the park.
Right.
There's very successful boot camp companies here in Atlanta,
right?
And so I wanted to continue. I want the group aspect of it with the personal training.
Okay.
So started incorporating boot camp. CrossFit came around. This was like 2010, 2011 for me.
Okay. Yeah.
And got certified. Fell in love with it.
Yeah.
That was
you were like one of the pretty much close to OG.
Yeah,
then.
and at the time it was like you're just seeing this stuff on YouTube,
Right?
And you're like, they're doing what?
You go like the workout of the day on the main site. And
yeah,
hit play.
and you try to do it.
Yeah,
and a lot of the movements, I'm like, I don't even know what this is. Like I remember specifically, it was my first workout was the Filthy 50.
Oh,
and
woof.
There was 3 or 4 movements. I didn't know what a wall ball was. Double unders. Like I grew up jumping rope. Never done double unders though.
Right.
And there was like another 2 or 3 movements. But when I saw that, I fell in love with the competitive nature of CrossFit.
Yeah.
But also, and I would do the bodybuilding routine, the split routine for years. Mm-hmm. And after college, I just got fat, and I just wanted to lift heavy.
Yeah.
So there was no conditioning. I've been conditioning for the last 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
I was kind of done with running. But after you develop a gut and, you're getting strong, you're like, I need to incorporate some cardio.
Yeah.
I don't want to go to the pool. Yeah, I look jacked, but I got a huge belly, right?
Yeah.
So I love the fact that CrossFit incorporate conditioning, whether that's running, biking, rowing, jump rope, and Olympic lifts. That was something new to me. We did a little bit, but not a lot of cleans or snatches. No snatches in college.
Yeah,
very little cleans for that matter.
Mm-hmm.
But also what I love too, or at the time I didn't love it, but I loved the idea of doing gymnastics. I never walked in my hands. I've never done this. So that was skills that I wanted to develop that kept me coming back for more.
Okay.
So throughout the boot camp, I just slowly started transitioning our clients to CrossFit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I've been doing that, I guess the last 17 or so years.
Yeah.
Just having this, personal training and kind of a CrossFit group strength and conditioning, if you will.
Yeah. So what do you think was just so, like, I came in shortly after you, like 2011 was when I started it.
Yeah.
What do you think it was about CrossFit at that time that was just so because like you look at it now versus then, and there's just something that was so different about it back then.
Yeah.
That it just hit the right spot at the right time.
Yeah.
What do you think that was?
Well, I think it's 2 things.
Yeah.
I think at the time we've been missing out as a society. It was boot camps, but you're going, so that had its run for 2 or 3, and it still goes on. People love that. But I think that growing up, if you had any competitive fire in you, if you played sports, that was something like, this is for time. Wait, you're trying to go through this as fast as you can.
Yeah. Okay.
And there was a purpose to it, right?
Yeah.
Before it's like, all right, you in the back of your mind you want to get more fit, you want to get stronger, but you have this time component to it that was sport. You've never had sport and fitness, right?
Yeah, right.
That incorporated these movements. Yeah, bodybuilding's a sport, right? And this physique,
but it's like a subjective thing.
But if you had any sports background, and you can improve your time, and your lifts, and compete not only with yourself but other people,
right?
That took off. So number 1, I think it was the competitive spirit of it all.
Okay.
Number 2, it was hard.
It was hard.
And again, this goes back to sport. Like we've all had crappy workouts, right? Of like in preseason or conditioning, like, man, that workout sucked. But to be able to go back and kind of find that inner, workout that took you down as a high school or college. So it broke you down. Mm-hmm. But when you were done with it, you're like, you might be out for like 5 minutes, just trying to come to. That was like, man, I love that.
Yeah.
Right? And it's that, it's the endorphins. It's that, it's that high. It's that runner's high. It's that workout high that, man, you just did something. Like you just accomplished something that that far exceeds anything that you've felt in a long time. Mm-hmm. I haven't had that feeling of being after the Filthy 50, being on my butt for laid out, but to throw up, been able to get up and go, I want to keep doing this.
It was so addicting.
Yeah,
it was so addicting.
Yeah,
I remember just like I was sitting in church and like couldn't concentrate on what the pastor was saying at all because I was just replaying like I know what my workout is tomorrow, and I'm just playing it over and over and over in my, like, it was, you couldn't get away from it. It was crazy.
That's the thing. You can continue to do the same workout and improve your score. So then it's about, and then you're getting other strategy.
Right.
And that's the sport. That takes you back to anything.
Right.
There's strategy in sport.
Right.
There's never been strategy in fitness.
And
what?
It's just like reps and movements was what it was.
Right. So there was a clear goal. And it was, how many rounds and reps can I get in this time? Or how fast can I do this in 3 rounds or 5 rounds for time? And then you had the benchmark workouts. And then, you had the leaderboards. How are you compared to so-and-so in the Northwest?
Right.
At the same age.
Yeah.
And the Open came around and, you can compete with a community.
Right.
And then we can continue to talk about the different great things. I think the aspect of CrossFit. And the community was a whole nother deal. Yeah. It's so crazy because they found something super special back then, and they built on top of it very, very well. And it was. I remember like being so addicted to it. Like, the only thing I could think about was I drank the Kool-Aid hard. Yeah.
But it was so.
I think we all did. Right? I mean, we all did. And if it's something you've been doing for more than 3 years, and you hear about these stories like, I used to do CrossFit 5 years ago, and they're back. I used to do CrossFit 10 years ago, been inactive, things go on in my life, but I'm coming back. Like, why are you coming back? There's, there's something there.
Right.
You were in the most incredible shape.
Yeah.
You were, it changed your life.
Right.
Something happened that you're coming back.
Yeah.
Why are you coming back?
Right.
Right.
Yeah. It
so
does.
It's that fire.
Yeah.
It's that fire.
Yeah. It's very interesting. It's interesting seeing the different dynamics of people that come in. I'm very curious to see if it's still that way, because we deal mostly with the sports side of things, right?
Yeah.
And, I think the sport and the methodology were merged a little bit closer back in the day. So I'm very curious if that's going to be the case as well with this new generation of like 2020 to 2025 individuals that are coming in now. If they're going to be 10 years from now, like still like, yeah, I kind of want to go back and do that. And like, I took a break for 5 years, but I kind of want to go back and CrossFit. I'm very curious to see if that's still the case or if it's just kind of like this is a sport to them and then they're out, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think, you do see that even, I'm 42, right? So I grew up a lot of the guys where it's, and then Dan Bailey's not that, not that old, but the Kalipas, the Fronings, and
Spieler,
Graham Holmberg or whatever. So a lot of the older guys that competed, right? Now, volume is down,
right?
Not training, and that was never competitive,
right?
But there's something that if you jump into a class, like if I'm like, ooh, I did pretty well.
Yeah.
Like, it's a whole nother level, right?
Yeah.
But it would just get those juices fired up, right? Whether it's CrossFit or High Rocks or 5Ks, or there's always going to be competitions out there, right? And that, again, that's competitive. And people love that.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I think Graham Holmberg, I just saw qualified for the CrossFit Games again for like the first time since like 2016 or 17 or something like that.
Right?
So
I think you do see that. I think you will see that,
right.
And we'll see what the sport.
Yeah.
But the thing is there's very basic movements that won't change, right? In CrossFit, formats, workouts can change. But there's things, I mean, if you were to tell me right now, how many movements do you love of CrossFit movements, right? I tell people they didn't invent anything, right? They, format it differently. And
right.
Yes. But I'm sure you would say, man, I love 10 movements of the main 15, or whatever it is.
It's about all I do now. Maybe even 5.
Right? Yeah. So I think, for me, I love cleans. I love cleans.
Yeah.
I love certain things. Like I said, the gymnastics things pulled me in, from even the stuff on the bar, right, to the floor of doing handstand walk. I mean, it took me 2 or 3 years to develop a handstand walk.
Yeah.
But it's something that's athletic
Yeah.
about it. that
felt so cool when you.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember like all the pictures that people would take, like kicking up into handstand?
Yeah.
At different like.
Well, then you're
different
showing
national
off on the
parks.
beach, right? You're
Right,
like,
right.
look what I can do. Look what I can do. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
That's sweet. So you went from Cooper Sellers Fitness
Went
LLC
to
to
Cooper Sellers Fitness
to
and
Training
then
Box.
Changed. Yeah. So I had the CSF for 2009 to 2017, I believe.
Okay.
So 8 years or so, and then just wanted to rebrand. You know, I was like, I really didn't like the name anyway. You know, I was like,
Right.
you know, this is kind of stupid. You know.
Yeah.
But got to the point, started building the business. You know, just
Okay.
kind of renting space over the last 8 years, and it's like I need to find somewhere that's I could have more space.
Mm-hmm.
And so did that. Found the this current location. Moved in 2017.
Okay.
And so been here going on, I guess, 9 years. So this October will be 9 years.
Okay.
And then, we opened up our second location in 2022, February 2022.
Okay.
I believe that's right. We just finished our third year
Awesome.
in Woodstock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's sweet.
So that's been fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about kind of your business model, because I think I don't know if necessarily you're unique in this, but you've definitely built something that's kind of a little bit different than most CrossFit gyms. I know you guys aren't affiliated anymore, but
Right.
it's a little bit different than I think most CrossFit gyms, where I think you guys rely a little bit more heavily on the personal training, and then you want to keep your group classes a little bit smaller, more personal. Is that kind of correct?
Yeah.
Or? Yeah. Can you just talk a little bit more on that?
Yeah.
Or?
Yeah, it's pretty accurate. So again, it really just goes back to my background of personal training.
Okay.
And my love for personal training, working with someone one-on-one.
Mm-hmm.
And so being in that space from, really 2005 in college and finding that love for it until now.
Okay.
That's 20 years.
Right.
And that's something that I've loved, that I've been successful at.
Yeah.
And so I've always, and again, you develop these relationships.
That's one thing that I did want to talk about, is like some of your clients have been with you since the beginning.
Since Gold's Gym.
Yeah.
06.
Yeah.
06.
Right.
So I knew too that it is a business as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it has to provide income,
Right.
and provide food on your table. So, personal training did that. And then again, I got into the boot camp style, then CrossFit.
Yeah.
And I've had these clients. That's something that I think that if we can find good trainers and we can train people and develop a team, kind of like what we had at Goals. If we could have had 3 or 4, 5 trainers, and then develop this kind of CrossFit group strength and conditioning model with it, why can't we do both?
Yeah. Right.
That's something that the personal training, and then selfishly the CrossFit side, like I loved it in the group.
Right.
So as a coach, I love the one-on-one, and sometimes it's great to have a group of 6, 8 people.
Yeah.
That it's that community that we talked about.
Right.
And
Right.
something that I love,
Right.
and passionate about, that I can jump into a class and do. So we've had that model again in both our Roswell and Woodstock location.
Yeah. That's sweet. That's sweet. So it kind of evolved a little bit out of that the buddy system type thing that you were developing, and
Right.
then you kind of like implemented it into the gym
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. What about, so like, what specifically about the small group classes do you like? Is it still kind of like the personal training feel that you
It is,
have?
yeah.
Or in that?
And there's different models out there, and not to say that it's wrong. You've got other companies out there. You can have 20 people,
I mean, it's crazy.
25.
Some gyms are crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so for me, again, like you just alluded to, going back to that personal connection, it's like I want everyone to know that we're here for them, right? And we are coaches, right?
Right.
We're not, just there. We're not babysitting.
Yeah.
We're not a cheerleader all the time, although that's part of being a coach. But a lot of times in certain models that works for them, that's fine.
Right.
But that's just not something that I wanted. And, I like to keep everything under like 8 8 members to a class.
Yeah.
I think anything over that, you may lose sight of that.
Right.
And everyone's coming at different levels, right?
Right.
We've had fundamentals programs in the past that we've relied on, that if you do have a beginner that wants to get into these movements, they're going to take 5 weeks of a fundamental program before they get into the class.
Right.
And but we want to set everyone up for success. Ultimately, that's what people want to feel, right? Is to be successful. Can we get results in the meantime? Great. But, you're going to be in the best shape of your life. You're going to have the community feel right.
Right.
And so that's the other thing, is like the social aspect of it all. But yeah, so, personal training, semi-private, if you will, kind of small group, that's kind of our cup of tea.
Yeah. That's sweet. So what are kind of future plans here? You got the 2 locations. Are you open up another one? Are you?
So future plans. So we are working on a new development in Woodstock.
Yeah.
So our current location, it's right next door. So it's raw land. We're hoping to start building soon.
Okay.
So be on the lookout.
Yeah.
For
in
the near future. Hopefully we're able to announce that pretty soon.
Okay.
But with anything, there's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of unknowns. So we never want to, pull the cart before the horse there.
Right.
And so, we've just been waiting. I think we've been working on almost in July. It'll be 2 years since we've been working on this development.
Yeah.
But it is a multi-functional fitness recovery.
It's got it all.
It's got it all. So I'm pumped about it, and I'm excited to be able to announce it.
Yeah.
Pretty soon.
Awesome.
Right.
Yeah. Officially.
Yes.
Yeah. I think you was that December time frame that you did the walkthrough thing with us.
Was that December or January? Maybe January.
Yeah.
And I thought we were close at that time.
Right.
I was like, hey guys, y'all, come. We did a little walkthrough, walk your plans. So you could see kind of a 1-to-1 scale.
Cool
it is a cool concept. Right up the road here in Roswell. Little plug there, right?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. But that was super cool. You could walk your plans on a 1-to-1 scale. They put it up there on the screen, so to be able to walk through your space.
Yeah.
Right.
What did you feel like? Were you like getting super excited doing that?
Yeah, super excited. But again, you've got to come back to earth and go, we still got a lot of work to do.
Right.
There's still those uncertainties, unknowns that we're still working through.
Yeah.
And it's a permitting process.
Right.
And there's a lot of stuff that's kind of behind the scenes that, ultimately I just can't wait to get through that red tape, if you will, and be able to announce it and start working toward, the build out.
Right. Right. Because it seems like it's just kind of like a wait. Like you're just like waiting on other people to do stuff, and you're like, "Hey,
There's only so much. I'm like, talking to the guys at my team. Like, can I call up there? And they're like, oh, well, we got it. I'm like, you sure?
Are you sure?
I can. They might, rub them the wrong way.
Right.
So you got to be careful of that as well.
Right.
But hopefully, very very soon.
Yeah. Just like coming from the fitness industry, it's like you're all about like action, right?
If you're not doing something, like you say, if you're stagnant, you're not growing,
right?
And so I'm like, if I'm not doing something,
right,
and having to rely on somebody else that I understand they're doing their job, but it's a waiting game,
right?
Right, and it's patience, man.
Yeah.
It's learning patience for sure.
Yeah, just it's like it's growing in a different way, but it's just like
things you can't see,
right? Yeah. Very cool. Well, sweet. You want to chat about anything else here? Or?
I don't know, man.
We hit a lot.
Yeah. Is that a lot?
Yeah.
How long has it been?
I don't know.
Almost an hour.
Yeah.
I
can't think of anything else I want to ask. So maybe we just wrap it up.
Wrap it up?
Yeah.
I'll probably think about something right when we get off.
Right.
And shut it
That's
down.
how it always works, right? Well, cool. Thanks for coming on, Cooper.
Yeah.
What's the full Instagram handle?
We've got, you tell me. What is it?
the
training _ box. So that's the main one. Then we have the Woodstock which is, I believe, the same thing.
Yeah,
so the _training _ box _ Woodstock.
Yeah. Yep. And then website, best way for people to contact you if they're looking for training?
Yeah,
or?
so the trainingbox.co.co.
Okay.
In the trainingbox1@gmail.com email.
Yeah.
But no, real quick, if I could just say,
Yeah.
just one thing that's come to mind is, we talked about the programming aspect of it, and that's something I love. But being able to partner with Blacklisted has been great. Just getting a new life, new feel.
Yeah.
Because you end up kind of reverting back to like the same stuff, right? In programming.
Right.
So being able to have you guys here, I think has been great.
For
getting
sure.
new life in there.
Yeah.
And then as well as all of our other partners who have been helping out, and that's been Onward.
Yep.
Atlanta with locations across the city, and Lean Project Nation. I always get their name messed up. Is it Project Lean Nation?
Project Lean Nation.
Okay,
Yep.
all right. And then we've got Crew Chiropractic.
Yeah.
Dr. Brett, works out here.
Right.
We've got Maximize Nutrition with Meredith. So I think being able to do that, and that's something we've worked on the last several months at the beginning of the year.
Yep.
Be able to get those partners and just offer this all-in-one, encompassing fitness experience is ultimately what we want, and that's what we're here for.
Yeah. I think that was super exciting when we started sitting down and talking about that, and just like I think one thing that we're pretty good at is like building out a network of people, and like I think that was something we're able to kind of bring here and like change kind of. It's almost like changing how a lot of the gyms do their thing. Like
I think I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, you brought that up of like networking, and coming to me is like, hey, we got this guy coming in, like the endorphin, right?
Right.
We're going to start carrying that. It's a great product, but we've got this company coming in.
Right.
We've got, so I think that's huge.
Yeah. And just try
whatever we can offer, and help improve the experience of our athletes.
Yep. And so, we will forever be grateful for, we've told our story on here a couple times, but like, we're going to forever be grateful for, opening your doors to us and like letting us come in. So, and, I think we've been growing since we've been here with you. You've helped me understand a lot of business aspects of things, like,
and likewise.
Yeah,
I mean, So it's been good.
It's been a lot of fun. So here's to another, however many years.
Next time we'll have cigars.
I'm totally down for that.
We're gonna do that.
We're gonna get the ventilation system in here. Okay.
It have to be. We'll do nightcap.
Yeah, we'll have to paint the walls black though for that smoke stains.
We got to do something.
We'll figure it out.
All right, next time. We'll see you next week.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, guys. Please like and subscribe, and we'll catch you guys on the next one.
Thanks, Kyle.
Yep. Ooh, sweet. That was fun.
How's that? Was it good?
Yeah.